In the heart of October, nearth the pale moon's gleam, I ventured forth as a wildlife biologist, it seems. My purpose was to study, to learn, to observe. But in this spooky night, my frayed nerves wouldn't nerve. The forest dense, the night so dark, each rustling leaf a spectral spark. I sought elusive creatures hidden in the night, but shadows danced with unearthly delight. The owls hooted, their eyes like fire, as the woods were their haunted choir. They whispered tales of creatures untamed in this chilling, moonlit, wild realm. The wolves howled their eerie cry, echoing through the trees way up high. A call to the world I did not understand in this untamed, haunted ear of land. The trees themselves, they seemed to sigh with secrets old and a mournful cry of creatures strange and rarely seen in the moonlight's ear ghostly sheen. As I ventured deeper into the night, a feeling of unease, a chilling fright, for Halloween's curse, it beckoned me in the world of wild where shadows flee. So if you roam as a wildlife sleuth, beware the mysteries of the hidden truth. For Halloween's spell that lingers on in the wilds and woods till the break of dawn. Ha 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 ha! Welcome to the show today. This is a Halloween edition of Appalachia podcast. We have a special guest colleague, Larry Williams, will be coming talking all things creepeth and crawly and a true Halloween delight. So come on in, have a seat in our cerebral rocking chairs as we dive in. Let's get ready for today's special show. Welcome in, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that little Halloween poem. I love Halloween. It's a special time. Love fall in the South and East Tennessee mountain lands. So today I have a special guest for you, Larry Williams. He is an extension agent, horticulture agent from the University of Florida. That's right. We are teaming up with the University of Florida, those mighty Gators, to give you a treat this Halloween. We will be kicking off the show with our special guest, Larry Williams. So without further ado, let's dive on in. All right, we have a special guest on Appalachia podcast today. It's Halloween themed. We're talking everything spooky and scary. We have a good friend in the cerebral rocking chair today. We have Larry Williams. He's a horticulture agent, a colleague of mine from the University of Florida. UT and University of Florida is teaming up to give you some fun this Halloween. So, Larry, welcome to Appalachia. You got something to share for us today?
Thank you, Ronnie. I'm just enjoying this in the panhandle of Florida, this nice fall weather we're getting. Probably not as cool as what you have there in Tennessee, but I welcome it. October, November is my favorite time here in the panhandle. And if you get a chance to come down and enjoy our beautiful beaches, you need to do that. This is the best time of the year to do it.
Yeah. Those beaches are fun to visit in October. You're probably not as busy this time of year, right? Destin, Fort Walton Beach is probably not as busy.
That's right. It's less expensive, less people, better weather. So it's a win-win-win.
I think I've been very blessed to live in two of the most beautiful places in the eastern United States. I've got to live on the coast of the Panhandle and live in the foothills of the Great Smoky Mountains. That's two of the most beautiful places. And a lot of our folks trade off. We go down there to the beach, and a lot of you folks come up there or come up here to see our mountains. So it's a good trade-off. But we've got our Larry. He works with the Master Gardeners there in Okaloosa County. He was a good friend of mine, and I used to work with him down there in the Panhandle. And he's got some scary situations to talk to us about today, right?
Yeah, it's kind of fun, but it's based on reality that a lot of people don't know is happening in our own landscapes.
Yeah, it's a true story, right?
Yes, it is.
All right. Let's check it out.
So let me go ahead and start.
Yes, sir. Go ahead and share your screen and tell us what scary stuff goes on right beneath our feet that we don't realize.
How's that look, Ronnie?
Looks great.
We're going to start out with this, like I said, the reality of what happens in our own surroundings that we're not aware of. So I'll make it a Halloween type theme. So scary things are happening in our landscapes as we approach Halloween. The reality of what happens deep down in the darkness of a fire ant mound. I don't know if you have fire ants up that far north yet. We certainly do.
Absolutely.
Deep down in the darkness of a fire ant mound, hidden to human eyes, or in the tunnels of a mole cricket, where only creepy, crawly things dare to enter, may be too scary to believe. We'll have fun with this.
Yeah.
USDA introduced a tiny South American fly to the U.S. to help control the pesky imported fire ant. Literally, these introduced phorid flies, they're called phorid flies, you see on the screen, cause the fire ants' heads to fall off. They then use the decapitated heads to reproduce. How gruesome. The flies hover above the ants, dive in, latch onto the ant's body, and inject their eggs. The egg hatches and the maggot wiggles its way into the ant's head, where it grows for 2 or 3 weeks before secreting a chemical that dissolves the membranes holding the ant's body together. In a few hours, the ant's head falls off. The maggot eats everything in it, and then it uses it as a pupa case. Interesting things that are happening there. I think all of us have assassin bugs. You need to be careful with this one because despite the fact it is beneficial, goes after a lot of insects that feed on our plants. It is a beneficial insect, but it can inflict a painful bite for we humans as well. But so be cautious. Assassin bugs are frequently seen slowly crawling on shrubs in our landscapes. Most are brown to black, but many are brightly colored, as you can see in the pictures there. A common species is reddish orange in the nymph stage. That's the immature stage. Assassin bugs feed on many harmful insects. Caterpillars are their favorite food. They digest their prey before eating it. How tasty. They do this by piercing their victim with their sharp beak, injecting digestive enzymes. This causes chaos on the unfortunate insect's nervous system and liquefies the internal organs. The liquefied contents are then consumed, leaving only the shell of its kill. Here's one that you may not be familiar with. It was introduced in Florida and worked with from South America to go after the mole cricket. And we do have a lot of problems with mole crickets that get in our lawns or landscapes, our golf courses, pasture land. They particularly like mole crickets like grassed areas, including hay fields, pastures, home lawns, athletic fields. So the Laura wasp enters a mole cricket tunnel. The female wasp will pounce on the mole cricket, wrestle with it, and sting it on its soft underside. This immobilizes the mole cricket long enough to allow the wasp to deposit a single egg on its underside. The mole cricket recovers and burrows back into the ground. The wasp larva eventually hatches and slowly eats the mole cricket alive. Yummy. So we mere mortals should be aware of these horrifying happenings occurring in our own backyards. And we should be frightened by those people who attempt to kill every six-legged critter in sight because they have wrongly identified them as bad. In reality, less than 1% of all the insects that exist are damaging to our plants. Most are of no consequence to our lawns, landscapes, or gardens, and many are beneficial. It's these beneficial insects that are helping us gardeners battle the bad bugs during Halloween and year-round. So you see the kind of the poster child, so to speak, for the beneficials is the ladybug or lady beetle. And you see a terrific picture there of a lady beetle actually eating a green aphid. And they can consume both in the adult stage and the larval stage hundreds of soft-bodied insects, including aphids. So they're helping us, control many of these pests that are on our plants. So we need to be aware of that. And so the picture you see here is the adult lady beetle. And then you see the larval stage, which a lot of people don't recognize as the larval stage or the larva for the lady beetle, and they will kill the poor larval stage. We need to be aware of that and recognize them and leave them alone. You see the egg casing, that get bright yellow eggs laid in a cluster. Those will hatch into the larval stage, and then the larval stage goes into the pupa stage, and then out of the pupa comes the adult lady beetle. So you have to allow all 4 stages to exist to enjoy the benefits of having that beneficial insect in your landscape.
And Larry,
yes, sir.
Larry, if I may, for those that are listening to us, we got a picture. You can check us out on Appalachia YouTube to see what we're talking about. But Larry, I would describe that larva looking kind of like a grub, wouldn't you? Kind of black, and there's some mottled color on it.
Yes.
Just so people can know, if you want to see what that looks like, you can check us out on YouTube. But it's kind of a mottled color grub. In the pupa, the next stage, it kind of looks more like an elongated beetle. It doesn't have that lady beetle appearance yet, but you can kind of start seeing it forming. It's orange and black, wouldn't you say, Larry?
Yes.
It's the next stage. And some folks, including myself, we get confused with lady beetles or ladybugs, and those bugs that come and get on white siding and stuff. Those are 2 different species, correct?
Yes. The one that is a nuisance, especially up there in Tennessee. I've been up there in Gatlinburg when they were coming into homes and buildings during this time of the year, looking for a place to overwinter by the hundreds. That was an introduced species of ladybug or lady beetle. Some people call them ladybugs, lady beetles. That one was introduced from Asia years ago in the Southeast. I think the first place was UGA, University of Georgia, introduced it because our native ladybugs or lady beetles, which there are many native ones, they look different, like cats, have different markings and different patterns. Ladybugs or lady beetles do as well. There's one that's called the twice-stabbed lady beetle, descriptive name, that is bright red with 2 jet black spots, hence the name twice-stabbed. There's some that are orange with black markings, some that are black with red markings. So just become aware of how to identify these beneficials. And the larval stage varies in color too. There is one that's white, but they are soft-bodied in that stage, and they also feed on soft-bodied insects in the larval stage as well as the adult. And then you see the green lace bug in the picture. That is a very beneficial one. Below the picture of the adult green lace bug, it gets the name lace because its wings are lacy, translucent, lacy looking in appearance. But below that photo is the larval stage of the lace bug. And you see it's on a leaf with aphids. Aphids vary in color too. This is the rosy apple aphid that you see pictured, that this larval stage of the lace wing is interested in eating those. That's its food source. And it will eat many, many of those if we'll allow this to happen. But we need to learn to identify both the adult of these beneficial insects and the immature stages so that we let them live in our landscapes and do what they do, which is helping us reduce the population of the, so to speak, bad guys, the insects that are feeding on our plants that, our gardens or lawns or landscapes. Ronnie, one time I drove into my driveway years ago, and I had a Confederate rose plant. It's in the hibiscus family, and it was blooming. But I noticed from a distance when I drove in that the leaves were kind of off color. They were almost, some black, which ended up being sooty mildew or sooty mold, which is a growth. It's actually a fungus that grows on the honeydew, which is nothing more than sweet, sugary sap that ends up on the outside of the leaves or the plant from insects that are feeding on the plant. And usually it's aphid. When you see sooty mold or sooty mildew, you need to start looking for aphids, whiteflies, or scale insects, because that's what's feeding on the plant that's causing the sap to end up on the outside. All of those insects, literally aphids included, consume so much of the plant sap. They have a mouth part like a mosquito. They don't have a chewing mouth part. They stick their proboscis, their needle-like mouth, into that plant tissue and suck the sap out as the food. And they literally consume so much of the plant sap, they can't digest all of it. So they then excrete pure sugary sap that ends up on the leaves and on the stems. And then sooty mold grows on that, which is a fungus, and it's cosmetic. It grows, it's just ugly. It's that black coating that then coats the leaves. So I saw that from a distance on this Confederate rose. My mother had given me the plant. She's passed away now, and I walked closer to inspect it. And Ronnie, I found all 4 stages of the lady beetle, as well as whiteflies. Whiteflies love hibiscus, including the Confederate rose, but I found all 4 stages, lots of them on that Confederate rose. I saw the lady beetle eggs, that cluster of yellow eggs. I saw lots of adult lady beetles. I saw larvae walking around. Larvae is the plural of larva. And I saw also some of the pupa. The pupa will be attached to the plant, waiting to emerge, for the adult to emerge out of that pupal casing. So I made the decision just to leave it alone. I didn't spray or treat with anything, and it ran its course because I had such a great population of the lady beetles or ladybugs there. I didn't want to bother them, and I wanted them to do their job. So sometimes just watching what's happening and learning from what's happening in your landscape is the thing that we need to do. So that's what I mean where I have the statement, we mere mortals should be aware of these horrifying happenings.
Yeah.
I put the horrifying because, yes, it's horrifying to the critter that's being eaten, but it's beneficial to us.
Yeah.
So we should be frightened by the people who want to go out there and spray every 6-legged critter because they've assumed every insect that exists is damaging, and that is absolutely not true. Entomologists in Florida, at University of Florida, at University of Georgia, at University of Tennessee, all these land-grant universities will tell us that less than 1% of all the insects that exist, in other words, as you're out and about in your lawn, landscape, and garden, the vast majority of insects you're going to encounter are of no consequence to your plants, or they are beneficial. So we need to be observant and watch what they're doing. If they're moving around slowly and they're feeding on the plant, well, that's a pest. They're on the plant that they're eating. On the other hand, if you see these insects, like some of these that are pictured in this slide, and they're moving relatively fast, and there's not very many of them, they're moving from one plant to another, trying to find their next meal, which happens to be these harmful insects like aphids, whiteflies, scale insects. And that's exactly what these insects do, including one type, or there's numerous species of the stink bug. We assume that all stink bugs are damaging, but there are predaceous types that feed on caterpillars and soft-bodied insects. And you see this stink bug, and there's different colors. There's green stink bugs, there's brown, there's other colors. And this is showing a picture of a stink bug about to eat a caterpillar, which is one of their favorite food sources. And then finally, below that is a picture of what we commonly call earwig, which has gotten a bad name, but it uses those pinchers on the back to kind of fake you out and make you think it's bad and going to do something to you. It might use those to capture its prey sometimes, to hold on to it, but this insect in our lawns eats hundreds of little bitty soft-bodied insects like chinch bugs in St. Augustine lawns. You see it pictured here on a plant leaf eating aphids. So it's also considered beneficial. So Ronnie, that's my presentation, and
Well,
Wish
that's a great
people
job,
a
Larry. I
happy
was going,
Halloween and a safe
yeah,
Halloween, but realize that those kinds of things are happening in our landscapes year round.
yeah. Just because it's small, we kind of dismiss it. But could you imagine, having a predator that goes out there and lays an egg, and the maggot eats your brain and pops your head off? That's our that's pretty hard to imagine. Something going on like that. But
I think Steven Spielberg could not have been creative enough to come up with some of what happens in reality in the insect world all
well,
the
now
time around
yeah.
us that we normally don't see, and we benefit from it if we allow it to happen.
You know, uh, fire ants are such a big issue. They're here in East Tennessee. They haven't been here as long as they have in Florida. They're still a problem here. Um, I never got bit by a fire ant until I moved to the Panhandle of Florida, just because there's so many. You could say that Florida is an anthill, I guess,
That's pretty close to being
but
true sometimes.
we have treatments that we do and things, and I didn't know that they had released a predatory fly like that at one time. That's pretty interesting. And we get a lot of calls in the extension office about Asian ladybugs, because about this time every year, it's usually October or the fall. They come in the hundreds to even thousands, and they like to land on the side of white buildings and everything. And like you said, they come and they try to overwinter here. And if you have that problem, you can contact your county extension office. We have some solutions for that. But pretty much, if you cool down the sides of your walls and things, and I grew up in a white trailer, and white sided trailer, and they would flock to that thing. And if you take water and cool the sides down, that's less attractive for them. So knowing that, but Larry hit the nail on the head about beneficial insects. There are some out there that help. And I learned something today. I didn't know that stink bugs had any good in them. They get their name from a rightful cause, but you
If you
see
watch
them.
what they're doing, if you take a little time to watch what they're actually doing, if you see one of these stink bugs in their shoulders, so to speak, that's you had head and thorax, but the shoulder part, so to speak, of the predaceous or beneficial stink bug, not always, but many times, instead of being rounded, it will be somewhat pointed. And if you watch what they're doing and you see that they're actually going after caterpillars and other things, and of course you're looking at observing one of the beneficial stink bugs. Ronnie, I don't think I finished on that Asian ladybug or lady beetle that was introduced years ago. The reason they were interested in that one, which is from Asia, is because our native ladybugs are not arboreal. They feed mostly close to the ground on clovers and many other plants, but they normally don't fly up into trees. So they're very interested in this particular species from Asia because it would feed in the trees. And in Georgia, having all the pecan trees, commercial production there, they were very interested in bringing it in because it would feed on aphids primarily up in those pecan trees.
Yeah.
And what they when they released it in Georgia, I talked to one of the entomologists years ago that was involved with this. He said they gave up on it. They thought it just didn't work. It was 7 years later that they realized and started seeing that they did survive. This is the Asian beetle, 7 years after they released it. And but now, unintended consequences, it's gotten out of hand. And another interesting part of all this, I understand that where they're native in Asia, there are cliffs, light colored cliffs. So in preparing for winter, their native habitat and what they would normally do is to fly to those light colored cliffs and find cracks and crevices to crawl into to overwinter. Well, we don't have lots of light colored cliffs here, so they'll be attracted to buildings, the sides of buildings that are light in color. I guess just assuming, by default that it's what they do.
That's where they need to be.
So one of my cousins has a condo in Gatlinburg. I was there one time, in this time of the year, and it's a light colored, the condo, which is 4 stories. He has 1 unit. I believe he was up on the 3rd floor, if I remember correctly, but they were coming in, they would fly to the side of that light colored 4-story condo, and they would get up into the ceiling parts and come find, I guess, somehow to get in through light fixtures in the ceilings and to give them access to the inside of the building. So while I was there, the bedroom I was staying in, they were coming in by, I would say, the hundreds. And so it can be just a huge nuisance. Even though they're beneficial, you don't want that. One of the recommendations, if you can do it, and people give up on this, is to use a vacuum cleaner, vacuum them up, try to release them back outside. Well, they're still going to insist on trying to find some place to overwinter.
But yeah, some of this entomology is fascinating, especially me. I didn't have that background. I've certainly had to learn a lot as far as, working extension and dealing with those. We have mole crickets in Tennessee too. So, seeing that larval, do its nasty work. But I think Morticia Adams said it the best. She said that what is good for the spider is chaos for the fly. So
that's a good way to put it, Ronnie.
Yeah, so
Halloween season as well.
Yeah, so we see a lot of these insects and beneficial insects. We'll probably see some kids dressed up as insects this Halloween, spiders and everything. And we have a lot of people that have a natural fear of spiders for some reason. And I don't go and pick up or play with spiders or nothing, but they don't bother me. Now, my wife, she like, if she sees a spider, it's a dead spider. It doesn't matter what kind of spider it is. She'll call me in there and she'll want me to kill it. But talking about beneficial, the spiders are very beneficial as far as, controlling insect populations and things. And we had a big banana spider. We grew up in East Tennessee. We call them riding spiders. And the reason why I'm sharing this is there's an old Halloween superstition. Larry, do you know the spider I'm talking about? The big yellow spider with the black legs that has the writing in the web?
Oh, yeah. It's one of the orb spiders.
Orb spiders. So there's an old Appalachian superstition that says if it writes your name in the web, it could be a sign of death. Now, that's an old superstition. That spider cannot write your name in the web. But somewhere along the way, these old Appalachian people that settled these mountains, they believe that, if that spider could write your name in the web, it was a bad omen. So,
well, Ronnie, do you think that, I like to pull a good practical joke sometimes, but do you suppose that back then some of those folks could have been bored and found some way to use some?
Yeah, maybe so. And since we're on
thread or whatever, and
that would be good. But since, we brought up superstitions, and this is far from an insect, but my grandmother, she lived to be 89. She lived in these hills her whole life, and she was very superstitious. And growing up, very, very poor, very rough, having to live off the land. I guess they acquire these things from generations, but she hated owls. She did not like owls, and so we had an old smokehouse that was not operable, and we had barn owls get into it one time. And Larry, have you ever seen a barn owl? It's not like the ones that one of those barred owls. There's a barred owl.
Pretty good imitation there, Ronnie.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with them. I don't. Yeah, it's rare here to actually see them. But
so barred owls are the ones that are gray and they look like a typical arrow. There's the one that caterwauler. But barn owls, like the structure barn, is the owl that you see on Harry Potter. That's the scooped out face that has a real distinct pattern. And they have a real wicked call at night. They sound like a ghost. So they have this real screaming sound. So later on in the show, I'll play one for you. But they have a real screaming, like a child screaming. So if you hear that at night and, there's no lights, it sounds like a child screaming. And so we had some in our old smokehouse, and she would call them haints. They're haints. And I don't know if you ever heard that term, but and Southern Appalachia, haint is another word for a ghost. So she always said that barn owls were haints that, come back from the afterlife, and you'd hear them screeching and screaming. And also, we have found out that a lot of these Black Panther sightings and reports they hear of screaming in the night can be a barn owl. So we'll play for one. We'll talk about some of those old other cryptids later on, but I just find those old superstitions fascinating. They like you said, they're around for a reason. It could be practical jokes back in the day, and it takes a lot for me as a wildlife major. I'm a certified wildlife biologist. A lot of people still don't believe that there's such thing as snipe because that old prac we're going snipe hunting, and you get a guy with a bag and a stick, and they're out there for hours looking for something that they think don't exist. But there's actually a bird called a snipe. It's very similar to our woodcock, but because of that old superstition and playing pranks, there's a lot of people that think there's no such thing as a snipe, but it actually is a snipe bird that exists. So it's funny and it's interesting to think how we've gotten here. Natural fear of insects. Some people have fear of snakes. I mean, I know people that are deathly afraid of snakes. If they see a snake, they're just so scared of it. But they can be very beneficial too. So we have fears of things that we ought not to have, but it's interesting how we got there, right?
Yes. And, there's an old adage that knowledge replaces fear. So people do need to try to overcome fear by learning a little more about the truth, the reality of some of these things. I think the snake issue, most people I think it's just almost innate. Even going back to the Bible and Garden of Eden, and there's been such negative things that we all have heard and learned, and going from back to the very beginning, and people will do some crazy things, sometimes hurting themselves more so or quicker than some of these things like snakes would. I've seen people. I knew one lady that almost fell off of a back deck. She saw a snake on the ground, not anywhere really close to her. It was in her backyard, and she almost fell off her deck in fear over a snake that really wasn't even a venomous snake. So respect is one thing to have respect for these kinds of things. I certainly, if I was out, in the wild somewhere, and they do deal with Black Panthers in South Florida. I'm up in the Panhandle, Northwest Florida, but they see them and deal with them. Farmers, they're problems down in South Florida in some areas with cattle and things like that. But if I was actually out in the woods, especially late in the day, in the evening, and saw something that large, and even from a distance, I would have tremendous respect, but it might quickly turn into fear.
Oh yeah, we
need to try to learn what we're dealing with, and those sounds, Ronnie. That's interesting. The sense of sound, smell. You can and the owls, the little fledglings or whatever you call the young. I've seen pictures of them with the light shine on them in an attic. The little young hatchlings, I guess you might call them. My background is not as much as Ronnie is in wildlife, but those can look spooky, like aliens or ghosts almost.
Absolutely, yeah. They have those down feathers, and they can look pretty wicked. But fear is not a bad thing. A lot of people talk about fear. Fear is an innate ability. I mean, that's what kept humans alive for centuries. Think about the settling an area, go all the way back to cavemen and Neanderthals or whatever you want to call it. There was things out there that can grab us in the night. We didn't have the knowledge. So fear is not necessarily a bad thing. You want to be educated about it and some of these things now that we have the tools. But
That's what kept us, that fight or flight, you know. And I still get scared. I remember going to Yosemite with a good friend that works for University of Florida, and we went hiking, and I wanted to see those big redwoods out there, or not redwoods, but sequoias. Or I wanted to see the sequoias, and we kept hiking and didn't realize how late it was. And me and this guy, two people from Florida, was walking out of Yosemite Park after light. So we were walking in pitch darkness, no lights, just a light on our cell phone occasionally, but walking down trails in pitch dark, nothing, in a new environment that neither one of us were familiar with. There's grizzly bears out there, there's mountain lions. I about knocked him over because we flushed a deer. I thought, it was going to be a big grizzly bear. Growing up in East Tennessee, living in Florida, I've not been around grizzly bears or mountain lions. In Tennessee, where I live, we have confirmed sightings of mountain lions now, and that's really cool to think about. They were here historically, but they've been moved out many years. But thanks to game cameras and people being out in the woods, we have now confirmed sightings of mountain lions in Tennessee. Something new. But you take the home range of a mountain lion, it is much, much bigger than a buck whitetail deer. So those animals travel. So we're starting to see some of these things coming back. So who knows? Working extension, Larry knows, you get all kinds of calls. We get calls on wolves. When I was in West Tennessee, we'd get calls about wolves killing chickens and mountain lions killing chickens, black panthers. Get a lot of calls from the unknown, and you can't be just quick to dismiss everything you hear. There was a long time where people called us crazy for thinking mountain lions were in Tennessee. So it's interesting, like I said, how we got here. How did we get here? But Larry, I appreciate you coming in, stopping by and seeing us.
Ronnie,
you're
it's
always
been
welcome.
my pleasure. I've certainly enjoyed it, and
Yep.
wish everybody a safe fall and Halloween season, but take time to enjoy the beautiful world we live in. This For us in the Panhandle of Florida, October, November is my favorite time of the year with the weather, and we do get a little bit of change in foliage color, but not like you do up in Tennessee and the Smokies and places like that. So fun time to enjoy this beautiful place that we landed in.
Oh yeah, it's a happening place for sure. Well, we're about to transition. We're going to talk about some more creepy things, show you what a barn owl sounds like and looks like. So stay tuned, and then we'll get into our forestry and wildlife updates. All right, everybody. Thank you, Larry Williams, for coming by and chatting with us on the Cerebral Rocking Chair. And I do want to show you what a barn owl looks like. So as you can see, I told you that it looks like the owl off of Harry Potter. It's got this scoped out disc-like face. It's got incredible hearing, offset ears, beautiful, beautiful color markings. So let's take a look in and tell me what you think. Imagine you're sitting on the front porch on a Appalachian night, and you hear off in the distance this sound. This is not the most common call. Let's listen to the juvenile. Pretty wicked. And this is the adult here.
Now that is what my mama would call a haint. So they're a little spooky, beautiful animal. No need to fear them, but I'll tell you, one of the most scared I've ever been was deer hunting. I wanted to get in the tree before daylight, and you hear that big caterwaul of a barred owl, that as loud as it can go there behind you, will make the hair on the back of your head stand up. So we'd also talked about cougars. Auburn Extension has a great thing about cougars. We do have sightings in Tennessee now that's been confirmed. Thank goodness for game cameras and things. But like I said, I remember at the time, even myself, I have to apologize. I used to think that, there's no way we'd see mountain lions in modern times in Tennessee. But the home range on these big cats are quite tremendous. So cougar, panther, Florida panther, puma, mountain lion, Mexican lion, catamount, king cat, deer cat, they're all names for the same animal. The big cat is the second largest felid in North America, weighing 65 to 265 pounds. The average German Shepherd weighs about 75 pounds, so they're really big. The length from head to rump of adult cougars between 3 to 5 feet, with additional 2 to 3 feet of tail. So cougars once roamed most of the Western Hemisphere, from the upper reaches of Canada's boreal forests throughout the United States and its limits to the tip of South America. So they have been identified in Tennessee, Louisiana, Arkansas. So we get a lot of calls in the Extension office. A lot of the wildlife biologists gets calls from black panthers, and I'm not here to dispute, if you know someone that has claimed to see one of these, I'm not arguing with you. It's, it's your prerogative. It's what you experience. But historically speaking, there's not been a documented case of a black cougar or a black panther as a mountain lion. There are instances of reverse albinism or melanistic, where the animal's all black. But to my knowledge, there has not been a melanistic cougar identified. So if it's black, it would have to be a jaguar. So jaguars do have a color pattern that can be black, but they are in South America, the most northern of their range. So far that we know of is in Mexico. But if you've seen a black panther here in East Tennessee, write into the show, comment on YouTube, email us, or comment on Facebook messages. I'd like to know about it. I find that interesting. If you have or known someone that has seen a black panther, let's hear about it. Again, I'm not going to argue with you. I just want to know. But many reports of the Southeast are of a black panther, since cougar of an all-black coloration has never been recorded. It's hard to believe that it was a panther, but jaguars exist in all black color phases. So they're just backing up what I said. So if it's not panthers, what could it be? Some folks are saying black bears are mistaken for black panthers. A lot of times we see bobcats are misidentified as cougars. Bobcats are much smaller and have a predominantly shorter tail. They also have distinctive color marks on the back of their ears, and they also have a bobtail, obviously with a white tip. So when you see pictures, look at native vegetation. Okay, there was a picture circulating on Facebook several years ago of a mountain lion in my hometown, and it had subtropical plants in the background, plants that you would find in Florida. So that was a big clue. Also, objects can help you identify sizes. So check that out in the game cam pictures. Look at the surrounding area. So here's an article from our local news station. TWSA's cougars and alligators are migrating to the state, but none so far in East Tennessee. This was 2021. I have I have seen pictures of cougars where I hunt out in Middle and West Tennessee, and the alligators are a different topic, but they released a video in 2018 of a 7-foot alligator spotted at Wolf River Wildlife Management Area in Fayette County. It's wild. If in Florida when I was there, we treated every body of water as potentially having one of these alligators. So kind of wild to think about. But in other news, let's talk about some good news. Let's talk about wildlife activities. Part of this show, Appalachia, is natural resources and wildlife management. So according to the Wildlife Society, Americans spent a record $394 billion, that's with a B, billion, on outdoor activities last year, an all-time high, even when adjusted for inflation. The National Survey of Fishing, Hunting, and Wildlife Associated Recreation found that U.S. residents took over 1.7 billion trips to participate in activities like fishing, hunting, wildlife watching, recreational boating, and target shooting. And they're spending a record 14 billion days in the field. Over half of Americans over the age of 15 participate in wildlife watching. So this survey was conducted by a nonpartisan resource organization at the University of Chicago for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So that's great news. Wildlife is a big industry, and just don't think of it as hunting. That is a big part. That's a part that I really enjoy, but it's also recreation, wildlife viewing, boating. So it is very important on our landscape. That's why the land-grant university systems are so dedicated to helping with wildlife management, wildlife science, and we have these great degree programs that can create a career about that. So good news out of the U.S. Fish Wildlife Service. If you do hunt and fish, remember that you are a minority, and we must be good stewards of the practice. And optics means a lot. So respecting the game, respecting others and their opinions, and doctors have bedside manner. Let's practice some tree side manner. So a bunch of diverse people enjoy wildlife activities through the United States. East Tennessee rescues. Let's talk about this. This came out this month. Unfortunately, we had a bear cub that died from a pneumonia outbreak at East Tennessee Rescue. You may have saw this on the local news. It's been a roller coaster of a month for the Appalachian Bear Rescue in Townsend. The animal rescue made national news for its rescue of Juggles, a cub that had a jar stuck on its head. Then just later, unfortunately, first of the several cubs died after a pneumonia outbreak that was eventually linked to the bacteria, Streptococcus. Now, a third bear has died while the other ailing cubs are improving after treatment from UT Vet Clinic. Bumper, who rallied briefly after becoming very sick, passed away on the 23rd. While they got sick, on October the 16th, a bear cub named Flipjack died from what appeared to be a severe case of pneumonia in both lungs. They had been living with 5 other bear cubs in a pen, and those bears were taken to the clinic for evaluation and treatment because the vet suspected pneumonia. And pneumonia is contagious in bears. All the tested cubs had severe pneumonia and had lesions on their throats that resembled strep throat. The second bear cub, Burrito, died sometime in the night. So what steps did the bear rescues take to contain the outbreak? Well, good sanitation goes a long way. The bear rescue took 5 cubs who shared his enclosure to the UT College, the veterinary college. All cubs were intubated and received oxygen. Samples were taken, antibiotics and fluids were administered. It took all day to take one bear at a time, using every care we on the rescue said. So the cubs now are holding their own and began to improve. The cubs and residents are doing well, they said. So there's a story similar about catching salmonella. Bears can catch salmonella. Bear was in a chicken pen that unfortunately had to be not euthanized, or it had to be shot The bear was damaging property and livestock. So they rescued the cubs, and unfortunately, that is what allowed to some salmonella and some of this bacteria. Also, the link says you could check that out at the Tennessean or WBIR. Covered it, our local news channel. So unfortunately, but good news is the bear rescue is taking care and help rehabilitating our bears. Bears are still out and about. They're trying to get fat. They're about to go to sleep for a little while in their torpor, or some people call it hibernation. Our bears don't do a true hibernation, but we saw it at the McDonald's in Seymour, Tennessee. So if you live in the Seymour area, you had a bear trying to get in the McDonald's drive-thru. It wasn't literally trying to get in the drive-thru, but it was there on Chapman Highway, and me and the wife drove over, and we actually found it in the adjacent neighborhood. So it was roaming around. So they're still out and about. Remember, be bear wise. You can watch our previous episodes that talk about living with bears. So we have forestry footnote from our extension specialist, Dr. Merker. He does a great job for the University of Tennessee. I wanted to talk about this newer topic. It's about, what about forest carbon? So have you heard of carbon credits? Markets for rewarding landowners to increase carbon sequestration and storage are opening up. A carbon credit is the market term used for stored carbon. It is measured as a metric ton and is a standard unit of measurement for carbon trading programs worldwide. So foresters conduct inventories to compute timber volume, which is then converted to weight. Computer models adjust for site productivity, stocking, and growth, and the amount of carbon stored in forests, and hence carbon credits can be protected. Carbon credits have value to business entities who voluntarily seek to offset their CO2 emissions. Such entities may include power companies, manufacturers that burn or utilize fossil fuels. When an entity falls short of lowering CO2 emissions to a specific goal, they purchase carbon credits either from other manufacturers or from carbon storage projects that sequester then store atmospheric carbon, such as forests. That's where Tennessee woodloaners would come in. Our role at UT is not to endorse carbon credit trading programs, rather to inform you of them. Carbon credit trading is a contractual agreement lasting several years that may not be for everyone. In most cases, enrolling in the program will place an encumbrance on your property. These programs are funded by private investors, not the government, and these investors are counting on participants to deliver a product, which is stored carbon. The prices fluctuate and are not guaranteed. Harvest timber during the contract is limited or not allowed, potentially resulting in a penalty. Participants should seek full disclosure and legal advice before enrolling in carbon credit trading program. Carbon credit trading could provide a more regular than normally lower income stream than traditional timber harvest. The program may be a good fit for some landowners, but not for all. And that's coming reference out of Penn State University and our extension specialist, Dr. Merker. So that's a big topic in forestry right now. If you have any questions, contact your local county extension office, or we can give you some more information and make the right decision for you. All right. We will transition right into our hobby farming update. So, tasks for October: continue picking any remaining warm or early cool season crops. Keep an eye on soil moisture levels and manage pests as warm season fruiting crops harvest finish and cool season begins. We are awful dry in Tennessee as a whole right now. There's places that have burn bans on in Middle Tennessee, West Tennessee, where I don't think that we have been quite as dry here in East. If you are participating in garden variety trials, send in your evaluations true. That's for some of the folks that are working with extension and doing some variety trials. Take soil tests and make adjustments to pH as recommended. So right now is a great time to test your soil. You can get those tool testing kits here at the extension office. We have boxes that give you a place to place the soil, and you can look at selecting crop codes. What's great about our extension and soil test is it's very specific for the crop that you wish to grow. And It's going to give you a recommendation for your macronutrients, which is your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, along with an adjustment for your pH, which is a lime recommendation most of the time. And our soil does need amending here in Tennessee. We have some acidic soil that, we would correct with lime depending on the crop. And that's nice to know, because if you're growing a crop that loves acidic soils like blueberry, we can tell you how to make your soil more acidic. Or if you're trying to grow, a lawn or pretty much, a different variety of plants, keep it more basic. So that's a great timing to do so. It's really needed because it affects your management practices at every level, your soil amendments. So I want to touch base. I'm getting a lot of calls in extension office about fruit trees, and a lot of the fruit trees that I see are apples. So apples for the Tennessee garden. Apples are the most familiar and commonly grown tree fruit, but they're also a long-term and time-consuming investment. Even for a casual backyard tree or two, proper pruning, cultural practices, and best disease management are crucial to harvesting high-quality fruit. You got to select the best sites. They require deep, well-drained soils and full sun sites for good production and health. Planting sites should also be carefully tailored to mature size of trees. Standard trees can be up to 30 feet tall, while the use of dwarf fruit stalks can reduce spacing considerably, but may require more support due to less vigorous root systems. And they absolutely will. They require usually irrigation or watering, so make sure you do your research in selecting dwarf-sized trees. A lot of what I see can be prevented by selecting best cultivars. An ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. Many diseases can damage and reduce fruit harvest or even kill apple trees, so selecting cultivars which are resistant to the most common diseases are important. Resistance is often used in conjunction with carefully managed spray programs to prevent the impact of pests and disease. Disease and pest-tolerant cultivars are key assets, but don't assume the resistance will enable fruit trees to perform well with little to no management. I hate to break the bad news, but there's nothing that you can just throw in the ground and walk away. It all takes management. Cultural management, including cultivar selection, site selection, pruning, training, pest and disease control, and sanitation are crucial. I'm going to give you some examples of some cultivars. Williams Pride, Liberty, Freedom, Gold Rush, Enterprise, Arkansas Black are cultivars with some resistance to key diseases such as scab, fire blight, powdery mildew, cedar apple rust. So check those out. If you have any questions, give us a call at the extension office. It's coming up on the appropriate time to be planting these trees, and we'll even show you how to plant them correctly and get you started off on the right type. So a lot of people have pruning in mind. So there's two types of pruning in home fruit trees. Dormant pruning is the most common and is done as active growth is not occurring. That's what's coming up soon. That means much of the inner reserves of the plant are stored in the more permanent and mature parts of the tree, the trunk or roots. So critical reserves are not lost when you prune at this time. Active growth starts in the spring. These reserves will support active new growth. Heavy dormant pruning can lead to rapid, vigorous growth, so it should be used in moderation to direct the shape of the tree or plant and remove any damaged or diseased tissues. Dormant pruning can be used to assess plant health and ensure healthy tissue for spring growth. After pruning, cuts are made back to healthy tissue. So if you need to know how to prune fruit trees or any trees in general, we can help you out at the extension office. We have some great publications for that. Pretty much in apples, you want one main leader going straight up, and you want to sporadically have limbs that are not taking up most space. You don't want to have two limbs that are over top of each other. You want to have them not sharing that space. So you will go in a, for lack of a better term, a circular pattern to where they're not sharing the same space. And if you look on that limb, it will have a bud collar. And when I try to prune any tree, I always try to take it back to the bud collar, because that is naturally where it's going to want to try to heal itself. So, again, that season's coming up on us. If you need help, give your local county extension office a call. And apples are great to bob this time of year. So those late apples, go to the store for your Halloween parties and get to bobbing for apples. I enjoyed it greatly. Thank you for joining the show today. I had fun. Halloween's a great time. I wish everyone a happy Halloween, and be safe, and go out and go forth as goblin and ghouls into the night. Thank you for joining in.